Welcome to the DaveCast. It is Saturday, February 6th, and we are continuing in our study through the Sermon on the Mount, which is found in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7. Just a quick review of where we are in the study. We've gone through the Beatitudes, which serve as kind of an introduction to this teaching of Jesus, where he is announcing the kingdom and who will be a part of it. He then uses a couple of metaphors to bridge there about salt and light to describe his disciples' role in this kingdom. And then Thursday, we begin to look at this next section that Jesus is getting into. It says that he has come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And so that leads us up to these next verses where he will actually reference some of the Torah, the Ten Commandments, but also some other things like divorce and taking a person to court. And he will explain what following that law will look like in the kingdom. And so these next verses we are going to be considering today are from Matthew 5, 21 through 37. And I know that is a little larger block of Scripture than we've been doing in this teaching series, where I've been mostly going through a couple of verses at a time. But I want to get all of this out on the table today, and then we will actually return to it and break it down in a little more detail over the next few episodes. But for today, let's consider this section as a whole. And so Jesus continues teaching. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot even make one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. And so it seems to me, if I had to sum it up, that the overarching theme of this section is this. Who you are as a disciple is not just about you, but about you as a disciple in community. Who you are as a disciple is not just about you, but about you as a disciple in community. This section of the Sermon on the Mount begins to turn the perspective of the disciples outside of themselves. They are not disciples. We are not disciples for our own sakes and our own actions, but for the sake of those around us as well. I mean, there is an accountability, a responsibility to the other for the sake of the good of the community. In other words, it's much easier to live by a list of rules and laws than it is to live in an authentic, dynamic, and redemptive relationship to the people in our community. And so what Jesus is doing here is reaching into the law, into the Torah, to reveal its main objective, the valuing and the protection of others. For example, he says, you've heard it said, do not murder. But it's not enough just to prohibit the killing of another person, as obvious as that should be. The deeper point here is the value of the other. And so if we are angry with a brother or sister, Jesus says it's just as bad as murder. What is required is that we not only fail to do them harm, but that we are engaged in proactively seeking their good, affirming their worth, even to the risk of our own good. And so it begins with us. And so we don't wait for them to act, to seek us out, to offer us the hand in reconciliation. We should be the ones that are proactive. And so Jesus says, therefore, if you are offering your gift to the altar and you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, stop what you're doing. Leave your gift there in front of the altar and go be reconciled to them. In other words, Jesus is saying, we cannot even worship well until we have stepped redemptively toward another with whom we are in conflict. So I think we see there this overarching theme, right? I mentioned to you, who you are as a disciple is not just about you, but about you as a disciple in community. And so he talks about adultery and divorce. And what I see here, and have watched over the years among church folks, is that the challenge regarding adultery and divorce can be so easily reduced to moralism and self-discipline. But there's so much more at work here than we see kind of at first glance. I mean, yeah, that's certainly part of it, examining our own hearts. But it begins there and extends to how we live out our discipleship in community. It begins with the recognition that the culture of that time had reduced women to the status of property and sources for male satisfaction. But if you study the life and teaching of Jesus, you will see how he repeatedly elevated the status of women far above the male patriarchy of that culture and time. For Jesus, the value of all persons prohibits our objectifying them through lust or discarding them through divorce. And we're going to look at this a little bit closer next week because there's some real implications for justice that extend to our time. But the point is, we are to treasure and nurture one another as sisters and brothers, as equals, and as worthy of honor and protection. All of this stands on a foundation of simple and profound truthfulness. I've heard legalistic Christians spend far too much time trying to argue whether or not one should be required to swear an oath in order to testify in a court of law. And that is so missing the point. What Jesus asks of his followers is an utter trustworthiness that does not need oaths of affirmation in dealing with one another. The formal swearing of an oath in court has little to do with the point Jesus is making. What he asks is that we live utterly true, transparently honest, and dependably trustworthy. Again, who you are as a disciple is not just about you, but about you as a disciple in community. And so listen, I know that's a lot. That's a huge block of Scripture to consider all at once. And we'll come back to some of the specific verses next week and drill down and break them down a little bit further. But I think this is going to be a good place for us to stop for today. Conyers First Friends, we are online only again tomorrow. The COVID numbers in Rockdale are slowly coming down to the point that I think we will be able to be back for in-person worship by the end of this month. So listen, be safe and careful out there. Don't go crazy at a Super Bowl party or anything. So, we can keep our community safe, get these numbers down and be able to safely return for in-person worship. I remind you that tomorrow is the first Sunday of the month, and so we will be having a Holy Communion as part of our online service. And so we've done this many times now, but just to remind you, you'll need to prepare your elements of bread and juice for that part of the service so that you'll be able to partake of the sacrament there in your homes. I do so look forward to being with you virtually tomorrow in worship, and of course virtually again next week back here on the DaveCast. Until then, though, you keep bringing the hope, and I will see you next time. God bless you.